Rowena, Blatche, ang nasa si boss mo. Ha? Okay. The 68th session of the Senate, in the first regular session of the 16th Congress, is hereby called to order. Senator Vicente C. Soto III will lead the chamber in prayer.
Our Lord God, we give praises and gratitude to you for all the blessings that you have given us. We thank you, dear Lord, for the gift of life, for the love of our family and friends, and for the trials that strengthen us each time. We humbly ask for your forgiveness for all the wrongdoings and shortcomings that we have committed. Today we bow our heads in prayer to ask for your guidance. May you give us the wisdom, discernment, patience, and understanding to help us make the right decisions for our country. Heavenly Father, please heal the wounds that we have inflicted through our words and actions towards others and ourselves. Help us to live righteously, to seek inner peace, and actively pursue it. All of these things we ask in the mighty name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who lives and reigns with you, Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
With the permission of the chamber, the chair declares a 1-minute suspension. Sana si na? Yes. No. Just one more. Na pumasok sa hall.
Prayer. Yeah. Let's suspend that. So you can start.
Ha?
Call the roll. Right after the prayer. Hold
Wala bang tao dyan sa...
Nagkapaano ko eh. Bata pa lang. Alam ko yun yung birthday ko. Sige po.
The session is resumed. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senator Sangara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Honasan, Lapid, Ligarda, Marcos, Osmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Drillo.
Mr. President,
17 senators. 17 senators are present. Or 18 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of the quorum. Before the chair recognizes the majority leader, we wish to go on record that the entire chamber is wishing our colleague, Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino, the fourth, a happy birthday today. We suspend the session for 1 minute to greet our colleague a happy birthday. Session is resumed. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 67th Session, May 6, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? The reading of the Journal of Session number 67 on Tuesday, May 6, 2014 is hereby dispensed with, and the same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we proceed with the reference of business.
The Secretary will read the reference of business.
Bills on first reading. Senate Bill number 2203, an act to promote the production, processing, marketing, and distribution of Philippine mango, mandating the creation of a framework for development plan, providing funds therefore and for other purposes, introduced by Senator Sonny Angara.
Agriculture and Food, Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship and Finance.
2204, Philippine Immigration Act of 2014 by Senator Sonny Angara.
Committee on Justice and Human Rights, Civil Service, Government Organization, and Finance.
Senate Bill 2205, an act granting residency status to certain aliens through a social integration program in the Philippines under certain conditions by Senator Sonny Angara.
Justice and Human Rights and Finance.
2206, an act to promote and strengthen the Philippine bamboo industry, prescribing its scientific propagation, processing, utilization, and business development as a priority program, and allocating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Sonny Angara.
Trade and Commerce and Entrepreneurship, Environment and Natural Resources, Ways and Means, Finance.
2208, an act creating the Department of Culture, defining its powers and functions, rationalizing and strengthening its attached agencies, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Ligarda.
Education, Arts and Culture, Civil Service, Government Organization, Finance.
2209, an act establishing resource centers for indigenous cultural communities / indigenous peoples to enhance and ensure delivery of essential services, appropriating funds therefore and for other purposes by Senator Ligarda.
Cultural Communities, and Finance.
Resolutions. Proposed Senate Resolution number 624, urging the Senate Committee on Health and Demography to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation regarding the status of preventive health care in the country with the Philippine Health Insurance Corporation's Tamang Serbisyo para sa Kalusugan ng Pamilya or Check-up program as backdrop aimed at utilizing the said program as a model for preventive health care and further studying the feasibility of institutionalizing its implementation at the grassroots level in local government units by Senator Grace Poe.
Health and Demography, Local Government.
625, directing the Senate Committees on Trade and Commerce and Entrepreneurship and Economic Affairs to conduct a comprehensive review and aid of legislation on the Cabotage Law as embodied in certain provisions of Republic Act Number 1937 or the Tariff and Customs Code of the Philippines and the Republic Act Number 9295 or the Domestic Shipping Development Act with the objective of having a more robust and safer shipping industry and cheaper transportation costs to the general public by Senator Grace Poe.
Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, Public Services.
626, urging the Committee on Agriculture and Food to assess and conduct a critical review in aid of legislation of the rice sufficiency policy of the country, the feasibility of abolishing the National Food Authority's monopoly of rice importation and/or restructure or overhaul of the said agency by Senator Grace Poe.
Agriculture and Food.
627, congratulating and commending Congressman Emmanuel Manny Pacquiao for his outstanding victory against Timothy Bradley and for reclaiming the World Boxing Organization welterweight title by Senator Ligarda.
Rules.
628, commending the 2014 recipients of the Soroptimist Unsung Women Heroes Awards for their tireless dedication in service and uplifting the welfare of disadvantaged women in the communities by Senator Ligarda.
Rules.
629, commending Filipino journalist Rowena Paraan for being included in the 100 Information Heroes by the Paris-based Freedom Watchdog Reporters Sans Frontières for her active role in defending media workers' rights and upholding press freedom by Senator Grace Poe.
Rules.
630, directing the Senate Committee on Climate Change to look into the government's adaptation and mitigation strategies in light of the reported onset of El Nino this year with the end view of instituting long-term measures to improve the country's resilience to the worsening impact of a changing climate by Senator Ligarda.
Climate Change, Agriculture, and Food.
631, commending the Philippine team for winning 16 medals and awards in the 17th Clock Tower School International Mathematics Contest held in Valsea, Romania by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Rules.
632, congratulating Manny Pacquiao for winning the April 2014 WBO World Welterweight Championship title at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Rules.
633, congratulating Michael Christian Martinez for winning the gold medal in the senior men's division at the 2014 Tri-Glove Trophy International Figure Skating Competition in Jesenice, Slovenia by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Rules.
634, calling on the appropriate Senate committees to inquire in aid of legislation into the rapid increase of kidney failure or end-stage renal disease among Filipinos by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Rule. Finance, Civil Service, Government Organizations.
Health and Demography.
I'm sorry.
Health and Demography.
I'm sorry. I was referring to another resolution. PS Resolution number 634 is referred to the Committee on Health and Demography.
635, resolution calling upon the proper Senate committees to study and review existing salary standardization laws in order to grant the necessary increase in compensation and benefits of government employees by Senator Maria Lourdes Nancy S. Binay.
Finance, Civil Service, and Government Organization.
636, congratulating the Iglesia ni Cristo on its 100th year founding anniversary to be celebrated on the 27th day of July 2014 by Senator Soto III.
Rules.
637, directing the Senate Committee on Energy to look into the share of renewable energy and overall energy mix of the country with the end view of determining weaknesses in the current implementation of Republic Act Number 9513, also known as the Renewable Energy Act of 2008 by Senator Ligarda.
Energy.
638, directing the Senate Committee on Health and Demography and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an investigation in aid of legislation on the service and products provided by ASPAS and wellness clinics which may have detrimental effects on the health of their patrons by Senator Lapid.
Health and Demography, Trade and Commerce, and Entrepreneurship.
639, directing the Senate Committee on Women, Family Relations, and Gender Equality, the Senate Committee on Health and Demography, and other appropriate Senate committees to conduct an inquiry in aid of legislation on measures, policies, or programs to prevent the alleged proliferation of prostitution in evacuation centers by Senator Lapid.
Women, Family Relations, and Gender Equality.
Committee reports. Committee report number 24, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees of Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, Social Justice, Welfare, and Rural Development, Ways and Means, and Finance on Senate Bill number 2210, with Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV as author thereof, entitled An Act Institutionalizing the Poverty Reduction Through Social Entrepreneurship, present, program and promoting social enterprises with the poor as primary stakeholders, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bill number 1026, sponsored Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
Ordinary Business.
Committee report number 25, prepared and submitted by the Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship on Senate Bill number 2211, with Senator Cynthia A. Villar, Ejercito Estrada, Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino as authors thereof, entitled An Act Strengthening the Consumer Protection and the Purchase of Brand New Motor Vehicles and for Other Purposes, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bill numbers 306 and 1068. Sponsor, Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
Calendar for Ordinary Business.
Additional reference of business, committee report. Committee report number 26, prepared and submitted jointly by the Committees on Youth, Education, Arts and Culture, Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship, and Finance on Senate Bill number 2212, with Senator Cynthia A. Villar, Cayetano P., Sonny Angare, Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV, and Defensor Santiago as authors thereof, entitled An Act to Actively Promote Entrepreneurship and Financial Education Among the Filipino Youth, recommending its approval and substitution of Senate Bill numbers 147, 153201, 1032, 1192, 1327, and 1713. The sponsor, Senator Paulo Benigno Bam Aquino IV.
To the calendar for Ordinary Business. Majority Leader is recognized.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2210 under Committee Report number 24 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill number 220 under Committee Report number 24 is transferred from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2210 under Committee Report number 24.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of Senate Bill 2210 under Committee Report 24 is in order.
I move that the Secretary read the title of the measure.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 2210, an act institutionalizing the poverty reduction through social entrepreneurship, present program, and promoting social enterprises with the poor as primary stakeholders.
I move that we recognize our birthday celebrant, Senator Bam Aquino, to sponsor the measure, Mr. President.
Senator Aquino is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, esteemed colleagues, good afternoon. It is my honor and privilege to stand before you today to sponsor Senate Bill number 2210 under Committee Report number 24, otherwise known as the Poverty Reduction Through Social Enterprise or Present Bill. The objective of this measure is to empower our marginalized sectors and provide them with a proper infrastructure where they can get the right opportunities to grow and progress. We need to create an environment where they can stand on their own and be able to fully participate in our economy and our society. These conditions are to be inclusive and fair, where individuals and communities are able to think of new ways of solving ever-growing complex problems of poverty and injustice. Sa kabila po ng nababalitang economic growth, maraming pa rin tayong kailangan gawin para maibahagi natin ang growth na ito sa ating mga kababayan. Tinatayang may 2.969 milyong Pilipino ang walang trabaho ngayong taon. At dadagdag pa dito ang mga nagsipagtapos na mga estudyante noong nakaraang buwan sa mga walang trabaho. Paano nila masasabing umuunlad ang ating bansa samantalang makikipagbuno pa sila sa paghahanap ng trabaho upang makatulong lang sa kanilang mga pamilya? Paano po natin matutulungan ang ating maliliit na negosyante, ang mga tindera sa palengke, ang mga may-ari ng sari-sari store, mga magsasaka at mangingisda upang mapalago ang kanilang kinikita upang lalong masustentohan nila ang kanilang mga pamilya? Kaya't mga kaibigan, kailangan ay patuloy tayo sa ating pagtugon upang malagpasan po natin ang ating mga pagsubok at kahinaan. If we are to take on the challenge to join in the movement to decrease our poverty rate and bridge the big divide between the rich and the poor, and be able to spread the wealth to more Filipinos, there's a need for us to think of creative and innovative solutions to address inequality in our country. Kailangan bigyan ng pantay na pagkakataon at access sa trabaho at kapital para umangat ang estado at quality of life ng lahat ng Pilipino. Through the Poverty Reduction through Social Enterprise or Present Act of 2014, the existing Micro, Small, and Medium Enterprise Development Council, which is attached to the Department of Trade and Industry, shall be strengthened and expanded to become the National Enterprise Development Council or NEDC to effectively spur the growth and development not only of MSMEs but of social enterprises as well. A social enterprise, friends, or SE, is a social mission-driven organization that conducts economic activities of providing goods and services directly related to its primary mission of improving the well-being of the poor and our marginalized sectors. Ang pangunahing motibo ng mga social enterprise ay tulungan ang mga komunidad na masolusyonan ang kanilang dekadang problema ng kahirapan gamit ang mga makabagong modelo sa pagninegosyo at sa pagsugpo sa kahirapan. The NEDC will develop and implement a comprehensive program that will progressively improve the lives and economic situation of the poor and the marginalized. It should identify strategic economic subsectors with the potentials for growth, considering where the poor are concentrated so they can play a major role in their own development. And in the process, it should identify key SEs and resource institutions as partners in providing transactional and transformational services towards poverty reduction. SEs shall be developed as vehicles to ensure that the poor benefit the most from the sustainable subsector development. DTI shall establish a center where it will implement policies, plans, and programs that will promote social enterprise initiatives and identify sources of financing for the social enterprise sector for enterprise incubation, startup, and expansion. It will provide capacity building and sustainability programs supported by a social enterprise development fund. It will provide research and development services for poverty reduction and assistance for the market expansion of social enterprise in both domestic and foreign markets. The bill encourages the establishment of more social enterprises by promoting greater access to appropriate financial and insurance mechanisms and providing greater participation in public procurement. With this act, we don't just aim to support one or two social enterprises, but we wish to develop a social enterprise sector engaged in wholesale poverty reduction in our country. Alam po ninyo, bago ako naging senador, ako po ay naging isang social entrepreneur. Sa programa po namin noon na Happy Noy, tinulungan namin ang mga nanay na may-ari ng mga sari-sari store na mapalaki ang kanilang negosyo. Ang lokohan nga po nila nung panahong yon ay hindi sila sari-sari store, kung hindi sara-sara store, dahil sa mga balakid na naranasan nila sa pagnenegosyo. Ngunit sa pamamagitan ng dagdag na training at mentorship, wastong pagpapautang at market linkage, dahan-dahang lumago ang kanilang mga negosyo. At pagkatapos ng ilang taon, ang mga nanay na mismo ang siyang naging trainer ng aming mga programa. Sila na po mismo ang nagbahagi ng kanilang success story para ma-inspire at matulungan ang iba pang mga nanay. Hindi lang po umunlad ang kanilang negosyo, nabigyan din po sila ng kumpiyansa sa kanilang sarili at sa kanilang pinaghihirapan sa kanilang kabuhayan. Noong nakaraang linggo naman po, bumisita kami sa San Jose, Nueva Ecija para makipagkwentuhan sa Kalasag Farmers Producers Cooperative. Sila po ang ating mga magsasaka ng sibuyas doon po sa Nueva Ecija. Sa aming kwentuhan, nabanggit po nila na dati raw, panapanahon ang presyo ng kanilang sibuyas. Hindi pa sigurado kung may bibili ng kanilang ani. Kaya hirap na hirap po silang iangat ang kanilang kabuhayan, pati na rin ang kalagayan ng kanilang pamilya. Ngunit nagbago po ang kanilang buhay nang maiugnay sila sa isang malaking kumpanya dito sa Manila na nangangailangan ng malaking order ng sibuyas, bahay, at nakapaghuhulog na po sila buwan-buwan para mabayaran ang tricycle para sa kanilang pamilya. At syempre, nung kami po yung mag-Present Act, na bumuo ng mas maraming organisasyon na magpapatupad ng helping them realize how integral they are in the inclusive growth goals of our country. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, Senator Pia Cayetano is also a co-author of one of the bills that was consolidated with this committee report, and she will deliver her sponsorship speech. I withdraw my comments. It's for the next bill, Mr. President. In the meantime, I move that we suspend consideration of the said committee report number 24.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2212 under committee report number 26 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none, proposed Senate Bill number 2212 under committee report number 26, is that correct?
Correct, Mr. President.
Committee report number 26 is transferred from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Mr. President, I move that we consider Senate Bill number 2212 under committee report number 26.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is in order.
I move that the Secretary read the title of the measure, Mr. President.
The Secretary will read the title of the measure.
Senate Bill number 2212, an act to actively promote entrepreneurship and financial education among Filipino youth.
Mr. President, I move that we once more recognize Senator Bam Aquino to sponsor the measure.
Senator Aquino is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Mr. President, thank you very much to all our esteemed colleagues. Magandang hapon po ulit. This is the second of 3 bills today that we are sponsoring. The Committee on Trade, Commerce, and Entrepreneurship is pleased to present Senate Bill number 2212 under Committee Report number 26, otherwise known as the Youth Enterprise and Financial Literacy Bill. Mr. President, with an estimated 700,000 fresh graduates this year joining the ranks of the unemployed, the number of jobless youth ranging from 15 to 24 years old in the country will unfortunately breach the 2 million mark. As the number of unemployed youth in the country grows every year, we really have to create new ways of thinking to address this epidemic. The Youth Entrepreneurship and Financial Literacy Bill aims to build a culture of entrepreneurship as an alternative solution to unemployment and underemployment. Starting them young, the Department of Education would develop and integrate subjects and competencies in entrepreneurship in the curriculum for primary, secondary, and alternative learning modules. In addition, the Commission on Higher Education, TESDA, and other private institutions would then create entrepreneurship modules for tertiary and post-secondary education that are aligned from the basic education modules. Through training and exposure, young people would have an option of choosing to be their own boss and start their own businesses as an option instead of being an employee for a company that is not their own. Access to financing and grants will be provided together with mentoring and much-needed market linkage. Today, I'd like to talk about one of this year's 10 accomplished youth organizations or TAYO awardees. This one is the Tagum City Youth Laboratory Cooperative, Mindanao. And this is for their project, Financial Literacy for Youth Program. Isang kwento lang po. Bumuo po sina Reven na 17 taong gulang lang, just 17 years old, at ang kanyang mga kaibigan, ng isang programa kung saan tinuruan po nilang mag-ipon ang mga kabataan sa kanilang lugar. Ito pong mga kabataang ito ay mula sa mga public schools sa Tagum City. Mula sa 8,000 piso noong 2010, naging 1 milyon piso na po ang kanilang naipon pagkatapos ng 4 na taon. At mula sa 48 batang miyembro, lumaki po sa mahigit 1,000 miyembro ang kanilang grupo. Nagamit po nila ang perang yon, yung savings, para mabayaran ang kanilang tuition fee, pantustos sa mga gastusin sa bahay, at upang makatulong sa kanilang pamilya. Higit sa lahat, nagkaroon ang mga kabataang miyembro nila ng pondo upang makapagnegosyo. Now, Mr. President, there is a bigger chance for us to produce young businessmen and women if we start them young. Financial literacy in the basic education system is a good foundation for entrepreneurship in the future. At the same time, let us enable an environment where these young people can harness their innate energy and creativity and provide them the opportunity to start on their own and build their own businesses. As we create new enterprises from the youth, we of course address the unemployment and underemployment that's currently impeding the growth of our country and have true inclusive growth with the largest sector in the Philippines, the youth sector. So on behalf of the Filipino youth, I encourage our colleagues to join me and empower the next set, the new entrepreneurs of our country. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Aquino. The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of. But before I withdraw my motion, Mr. President, I would like to manifest that Senator Pia Cayetano, who is author of one of the bills, which was consolidated to this committee report, will be delivering her sponsorship remarks, and this representation would like to also is also an author of one of the bills, Mr. President. In the meantime, I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill 2212 under Committee Report number 26.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is suspended.
I move that we transfer Senate Bill number 2211 under Committee Report number 25 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none. Senate Bill number 2211 under Committee Report number 25 is transferred from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
I move that we consider Senate Bill number 221 under Committee Report number 25, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none. Consideration of the measure is in order.
I move that the Secretary read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
An act strengthening consumer protection in the purchase of brand new motor vehicles and for other purposes.
Once again, Mr. President, I move that we recognize our birthday celebrant, Senator Bam Aquino, to sponsor his third measure today.
Senator Bam Aquino is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, our esteemed colleagues. Last for today, at least on my list, Mr. President, is Senate Bill number 2211 under Committee Report number 25, otherwise known as the Philippine Lemon Law. Mr. President, it is our utmost concern to protect the rights of the Filipino consumer as it is a driver of our national economy. Many of our countrymen have saved part of their incomes just to be able to afford a decent motor vehicle for them and for their families. Today, we are submitting the Philippine version of the Lemon Law upang maprotektahan ang mga bumibili po ng sasakyan at magkaroon ng pamantayan ng kalidad ang mga gumagawa po nito. The name of the act, Lemon Law, is based from a Western idiom wherein buying a lemon refers to a purchase of a vehicle that constantly gives problems or is a substandard product. This is exactly what we are trying to avoid, Mr. President, in our auto industry with this measure. If we bought a vehicle within a year or have used it for only 20,000 or below 20,000 kilometers from the date of the original delivery, and yet we have experienced constant defects and constant problems with this vehicle, with this law, we will now be allowed to have that vehicle replaced or to have our payment back. Ang binibili po nating sasakyan ay dapat kanibel at kapaki-pakinabang ng ating pinaghirapang kita sa buwan-buwan na ginamit po natin sa pambayad ng kotseng ito. Once again, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, on behalf of our countrymen, I am privileged to sponsor the 3 bills today. And of course, these are the Poverty Reduction Through Social Enterprise or Present Bill, aimed to help Filipinos out of poverty and towards a path to prosperity. The Youth Enterprise and Financial Literacy Bill, aimed to create a culture of entrepreneurship among the young and addressing youth unemployment in this country. And of course, the Philippine Lemon Law, aimed to protect the Filipino consumer towards unjust business practices. Halina't sama-sama po tayong sabihin, sa pag-adsenso ng bayan ko, dapat bawat Pilipino panalo. Maraming salamat po, magandang hapon po sa ating lahat.
Thank you, Senator Aquino. I move that we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2211 under Committee Report number 25, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of the measure is suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 27, taking into consideration Senate Bill number 499 under Committee Report number 19. This is the picture-based health warning bill, Mr. President. I so move. I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 27, the picture-based health warning bill, Mr. President.
All right. Consideration of the measure is resumed.
I move that we recognize the sponsor, Senator Pia Cayetano.
Senator Cayetano is recognized.
To interpolate, Mr. President, I move that we recognize the Minority Leader, Senator Juan Ponce Enrile.
Senator Juan Ponce Enrile is recognized for the period of interpolation.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Good job, Val.
Preliminarily, Mr. President, I would like to start my interpellation with some request for information so that we'll have a basis for evaluating this measure if I am going to be favored with answers by the distinguished sponsor. Mr. President, the explanatory note says that 34.8% of our population is engaged in tobacco smoking. When was this statistical percentage obtained?
In the explanatory note, Mr. President, there is a footnote there, and this refers to the presentation made during the hearing, and I believe it is based on a 2003 survey. But we do have other data which we can put into the record later on that is more recent.
Yeah, well, I just want to know when this percentage of our population was taken, because it has relevance to the population existing at the time. And I would like to ask later on what is the magnitude of this in nominal terms, so that we can determine whether there is an increase or decrease in smoking in the country based on the measures that we have already adopted that affect the marketability of tobacco products. Because I remember we have increased the tax on tobacco products to rates that are rather quite heavy. And I suppose that one of the purposes of such a heavy taxation on this product is also to reduce consumption of that product because of the perceived deleteriousness of the product. And so with this, we have also adopted the tax warning, what do you call that, textual health warning for this product. And we want to know whether indeed all of these measures already taken by government had any effect on the reduction or elimination of smoking habits in this country.
Yes,
So
Mr.
I would like later on to get the figures in nominal terms of the total consumers of tobacco products in the country.
Mr. President, I'm prepared to respond to the extent of the data that we have cited and what I know is available. Definitely, in terms of the most recent data that would reflect the effects of the sin tax law, that is not reflected in this bill because hearings of this bill occurred. This is a progressive report on hearings that were conducted 2 Congresses ago and until the last Congress prior to the sponsorship of the measure on the floor. So most of the data here, and in particular the one cited in the explanatory note, is based on the Global Youth Tobacco Survey, which is in 2009. So definitely the effects that one would expect from the sin tax law would not be reflected in the data that was presented in this bill. However, I am prepared to state the following. Number one, we do expect that there would be some kind of health effect that would be reflected after the passage of the sin tax law. But we must remember that it was primarily a revenue measure. I always said that I support it because as a health measure, it is a measure that will still contribute to the overall effect that we in the health community would like to see. However, like any measure, this must be supported by other actions, and one of those actions are those that are reflected in this bill, which is graphic health warning. So this is just one of the many measures that we must undertake as a responsible policymakers to really have that impact on society, especially with the youth. So to the effect that what I had wanted as the chairman of the Committee on Health then was to make the prices even more expensive. So if I were asked if those prices were high enough to have a significant effect on the purchasing power, I would say no. And that is the position taken by all the experts, that for it to be really prohibitive for the youth to purchase this, it must even be more expensive. Yes, there will obviously be an effect, but not that kind of effect that we would like to see for it to really be out of their ability to purchase it. So if I may just conclude that we definitely believe that this measure is still important in addition to whatever measures we have passed in the past.
Well, I will lay down into the record the purpose of my question, Mr. President, so that it will be understood. Well, there is a clash of 2 government policies here. From the viewpoint of the national interest of the country, one is to minister to the health of the nation. Second, the other more important consideration for me is the availability of money to minister to the health of the people. Now, I would like to ask these questions in order to reconcile these 2 interests of the government of the country, because you cannot run a government, no matter how much you want to serve the people, if it has no money to support any program. And that's why I'm starting my interpellation by laying out these important details into the record, so that we will know how far we can go really to impose such burdensome requirements on a product which is a major source of revenue of the government.
Well, Mr. President, I'd like to just respond quickly to that this is not, if His Honor was referring to the graphic health warning as being very burdensome, I would beg to disagree, because this is a very minor change in the printing requirements, which would just impose some changes in the beginning, but once all of those who are familiar with how you go about printing labeling requirements, it's just initiating that process, laying the initial, I don't know the technical terms for it, but the templates. And then after that, you just roll it out. So it's just an initial cost, which has been estimated to amount to a few centavos, Mr. President. So, and in fact, in our last hearing, all the tobacco companies there have agreed that this is a measure that they are willing to undertake. So I don't believe that it is an issue anymore, that this is a great burden to any sector that will be affected by the changes we are making in the packaging of the tobacco products.
Well, this is a matter of opinion, Mr. President, because the information I'm getting also is that while the taxes on this product, tobacco products, have been maintained perhaps at a reasonable level, satisfactory to the government, the sales figure seems to indicate a lowering of consumption, and therefore it has an impact on the contributors of this tax revenue of the government. On the other hand, while the manufacturers will probably not quibble about the additional expenses that they will incur in the printing cost of these warnings. On the other hand, the impact of these increases will not be on the manufacturers but on the consumers of this product, which is very difficult to discard, even if you know that there is a risk involved in taking them, because it becomes a habit already and you get addicted to them. And I understand the trust of this measure indeed to help control and decrease, and probably, if it is at all possible, to eliminate smoking. But if we do this, there is an impact on the efficiency and viability of government functions. So that's why I'm asking these questions.
Well, Mr. President, again, a quick response. In fact, the manufacturers have quibbled about the effect of the graphic warning in terms of pricing in the last Congress. That is why I welcomed their change of heart in the last hearing in this Congress, because for the first time after 3 Congresses, they have finally come to accept that this is a measure that is a socially responsible move on their part. And so I would like to put on record that, I would like to make known that it is of record in the past hearings and Senate debates that the manufacturers, in fact, have raised their objections in the past. But I commend them for expressing their support and for recognizing that this is the socially responsible action to take today. Mm-hmm. And with respect to government dealing with a decline in revenues from the sin taxes, I believe that our government is also responsible enough and have also anticipated that if, along with the sin tax, other health measures are put into place that would, in effect, have a significant effect in terms of decreasing the number of smokers, I believe this government is responsible enough to accept that. And I also believe that they also have made their own computations to show that with the increase in taxes, the unfortunately not yet significant decrease in smoking would still be a positive increase in terms of revenues. But like I said, if the time will come that decrease in consumption will be so big that it would decrease revenues, I would like to believe that that should be looked at as a positive thing, because if you look at the economic loss in terms of what government has to spend, it would definitely be larger than the revenues that is being brought in by tobacco smoking. And those are the figures that we have shown and that have been presented many times in the hearings and in past debates that we have had on this matter, Mr. President.
By the way, Mr. President, as an aside, may I know if the Department of Finance was consulted about the impact of this bill when it was presented for consideration of the Senate?
Yes, Mr. President, they were in the hearings, and they are actually present here today as we conduct this Senate debates.
May we know the what percentage of the total tax revenue of the government comes from tobacco products? All inclusive, imported, locally manufactured, cigarettes, cigars, and chewing tobacco, sucking tobacco, snuffing tobacco.
If I may, if the chair may intervene, we have the data here. The total excise tax collection with the implementation of Republic Act 10351, and this is the excise.
This is the revenue measure sponsored by the Senate President.
That's correct, sir. Yeah. The total revenue collected for tobacco alone for 2013 is 70 billion.
70
billion, 392 million, 271,373 pesos, which is a almost a 42 billion increase if with the syntax with the new syntax law that we enacted. In other words, the incremental increase was almost 42 billion.
Only
So,
from
tobacco, sir.
Tobacco.
Yes, sir.
But what percentage of the total tax revenue of the government would that be, Mr. President?
I don't have the figure for the total tax collection,
Yes.
Senator Enrile.
What is the total collection from the so-called sin products?
The total
This would
collection.
include tobacco, alcohol, and other addicted beverages.
From the
Addicting, rather.
Yes. From the total tobacco and alcohol for 2013, the total collection with the implementation of Republic Act 10351 is 103 billion 380 million 12,337.
From and that would mean what percentage of the total tax revenue of the government?
Again, I'm sorry, sir, I don't have the latter figure.
In other words, tobacco products contribute a very large amount of revenue, tax revenue to the government.
I'm sorry, but I do not have that data as of the
Yeah.
moment. Yes, sir. I only have the data.
That's why
on
I'm raising this question, not to delay the approval of this measure, because I myself am in favor of ministering to the health of the people of this country. I used to be a smoker, and I know that many people die of
and just
tobacco use related diseases.
and just for the record, Senator Enrile, the tobacco farmers, as you are aware, share to the extent of 15% of the collection of the excise tax on tobacco, and the share of the farmers for 2013, both for locally manufactured Virginia type and the other products would.
That is one of my interests, Mr. President, because if this bill will pass, and I think the tendency is indeed to reduce smoking in the country, as well as, if not to eliminate it, then that benefit to the rural population of the country living on tobacco products through tobacco farming would diminish or would be eradicated. So,
Well, just to finish the point that I was, the information that that this chair was supposed to provide, the tobacco farmers benefited to the extent of 6.5 billion pesos, which is the 15% share from the reform tax measure that was passed. As a percentage, I now have the percentage there. The percentage of the BIR collection in relation to the total national
but
revenue collection, the tobacco would constitute.
I'm only interested in tax revenue without including the non-tax revenues.
That's we will ask for that data, sir, because I'm not certain that the data I have would exclude
because
non-tax
that
revenue.
is the sure support for the government. Non-tax revenue is variable.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, the data given to me was in general, so we're having it rechecked.
If I may add, gentlemen, to the discussion to clarify some issues raised by the gentleman. Mr. President, I'd like to emphasize that the focus of this measure is the youth. So I think we should be clear when we talk about the impact as to it bringing down the consumption of smoking. I think all of us will agree. I'd like to hope that all of us will agree that it is our desire that we will not have more of our youth becoming addicted to smoking. So if we will consider ourselves a success by way of bringing down the smoking, especially in the youth, then I'd like to think that any other measure would be, any other effect would be secondary, because this is, we all talk about the youth as our future, and when we see how much of the youth are already getting addicted to smoking, then I think it would be our primary responsibility to look at measures that would curb that or address that. Secondly, having said that, Mr. President, when we speak of the youth getting addicted, they will grow up into adults who will then, as they age, have a wide range of health problems, which is, not, if either caused by, will be aggravated by smoking. And as I mentioned earlier, the social cost of smoking to us, greatly outweighs the revenues that are derived from tobacco. And to give you the figures, and this was presented actually during the syntax hearing by Dr. Dance of UP, the cost is was 177 billion in 2011. I can give the members of the Senate the table, which, as I said, was presented in this hearing, but it shows how the effects on somebody who is smoking would have on the healthcare costs, on productivity loss, premature death loss, and how it cuts across different sicknesses. So I have those figures to show that. And the third point I would just like to mention with respect to the possible decline in tobacco consumption, and I would assume that relates to tobacco production, is in fact in 2013 there was an increase in tobacco production. From 379 metric tons in 2012. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong date. January to December 2013 production of tobacco, there was an increase of 11.8% from 48,000 metric tons to 53,000 metric tons between 2012 and 2013. So you know, if we're discussing the ill effects of the decrease on the livelihood of tobacco farmers, well, in fact, there has been an increase, and I've also just put on record the issues, the economic cost to us if we continue to have a lot of smokers.
Thank you for that answer. But then, still, I would like to posit this question, Mr. President. If indeed we succeed in the objective of this bill, and if we pass it, and we could reduce the smoking in the country to about 50% of its present level, are our finance officials have any idea of how they could raise an alternative source of tax revenue income for the government to replace what will be lost when this law is put into effect in terms of revenue? Have they presented an alternative source of income for the government? Because then this becomes a relevant question, because once the income of government is injured, some services must suffer. The health services, police services, defense services, educational and social services. Which one of these will suffer? All of them? Some of them? A few of them? And that's why I'm interested for an answer from the Department of Finance, if they studied this.
Well, before we get the response from the Department of Finance, what I can respond to is that the reality based on the economic cost to us, which, as I said, in 2011 is already 177 billion, that alone will curb the expenses in health, because so many of the diseases that our people are suffering, be it in the rural area, in the urban areas, rich or poor, are aggravated by smoking. And so if there will be such a drastic effect, which I will also put on record, I do not think this one measure will have such a drastic effect, because, as I said, it is just one of the many measures we must put into place to really see a serious decline in smoking, especially among the youth. Until then, the concern that His Honor is raising will not really materialize. But if to the extent that there is an effect, whether it's just 5 or 10%, then definitely that will free up so much funds in healthcare costs. And it will also free up so much funds from social welfare, because so many of the recipients of the DSWD's 4Ps, PPP, are indigent families, many of whom have members of their families who succumb to diseases that are caused by or aggravated by smoking. So I can say with much certainty, Mr. President, that the negative effect on the revenue collection that His Honor is considering can greatly be outweighed by the positive effects of a healthy community. And one more thing I would like to add in the discussion is the fact that if this were not the case, then so many other countries, be the developed countries and developing countries, would not have pursued this. In fact, we lag behind in terms of compliance with the framework convention that we are a signatory of. Our counterpart nations have signed this. We were due to sign this as early as 2008, and we are obviously 6 years delayed. We have signed. We have signed, but we are not compliant. I correct myself. We are not compliant with our commitment as a signatory, precisely because in 2008, we were supposed to pass these particular measures, and many other countries have and are already using this along with other health measures to bring down the incident of smoking in their population. So I'd like to believe that these are also countries that are also responsible with their fiscal responsibilities, and we are simply doing what we believe is necessary to protect our country's health, and at the same time, other government agencies will do what they have to do to make up for any losses in revenues, if that will be the case. But that is also why we pushed for greater taxation even then, because the records will show that there will be a dip in consumption, but the collection should not be affected if, in fact, the rates are higher.
Yeah. Mr. President, I respect the opinion of the lady sponsor, but that is simply an opinion. And I would like an empirical reply to the questions that I have posited. And I would like some information from the Department of Finance about the alternative sources of revenue that the government will put in place just in case there is a drop in the collection of tax revenue from this product because of the measure now under consideration. I'm not concerned about the experiences of other countries, although I'll come to that, because I'm not responsible for the people in their country. I'm responsible for the people of this country and their welfare. And I'm not going to guesswork or take any chances in adopting a policy that might endanger the entire country, although I accept that there is a salutary effect in reducing tobacco use in this country. But we have to be very cautious and careful in seeing to it that in adopting a policy, one policy of government will not hurt the other interest of the government.
Well, we will submit the response of the Department of Finance when they give the same to us.
Thank you, Mr. President. By the way, percentages are mentioned here. 34.8% of the population is engaged in tobacco smoking. First of all, we do not know the base of this 34.8%. But anyway, I would like to know, on the basis of this percentage, how many of these are cigarette users? How many are cigar users? And how many are suckers? How many are chewers? And how many are snuffers?
We will ask some of our consultants, Mr. President, but in the documents that I have, I don't see any distinction. But I will definitely submit if there is anything, if there is such data.
Yes. You know, Mr. President, the reason why I am raising these policy questions, because unless we go into the details of these statements, they become misleading. We do not know the exact magnitudes, if indeed these are true, and what are their quantum. That's why I hope I'm not misunderstood here as delaying the passage of this bill, but it's my duty to raise this question during period of interpellation. And I will come to that if I can make a classification of this. The reason why I'm talking about how many people are involved in cigar smoking, because this affects our rural population as well, and their livelihood. The tobacco farmers, they send their children by planting tobacco. They send their children to school. They educate them because of this, especially in our region.
Mr. President, although I do not have the data as to what are the percentages of tobacco products, which are cigarettes in packs, which are pipes, which are cigars, but I can tell you that more than 100 billion sticks are sold and consumed per year. So that alone tells you that 100 billion sticks of cigarettes packed are inhaled by the person smoking and also have secondary smoke effect on the persons nearby them. That alone tells us that there is a huge number of our citizens who are affected by the detrimental hazards of cigarette smoking. And this data I am providing is from one cigarette company alone. So although I do not have the specific answer to the question His Honor asked me, I have enough data to justify the passage of such a measure.
Yes, there's no question, Your Honor, Mr. President, about that. I don't think the lady sponsor will be that irresponsible to present to us a bill like this one without proper study. But I'm asking these questions because there are so many people that will be affected. Not only the government will be affected. Our tobacco farmers will be affected. The people employed in this industry, tobacco industry, will be affected if there is a drop in the usage of this measure. And all of these people are entitled to be protected by the government.
I agree, Mr. President, but protecting these people should not be done in a way that continues to perpetuate a harmful product in the market. So the responsible thing to do, Mr. President, is to create policies that will protect our people from harm and at the same time balance the interests of the other members of the community. But definitely not to prevent responsible measures from being implemented because of effects to members of the community that are a direct outcome of a detrimental product in the marketplace. So with respect to the farmers, Mr. President, I think we all know that there has been legislation passed that requires specific support for the farmers that were affected. And I also put on record just a few minutes ago that in fact tobacco production has increased after the passage of the Sin Tax Law. So I believe, Mr. President, that the focus should really be on the details of the graphic warning bill because the effect of smoking on the general public is no longer at question.
You know, the reason why I am also asking these questions because some of these statements are very general. For instance, it says 34.8% of our population is engaged in tobacco smoking. Okay, that's correct. If you get the people who are smoking cigarettes and cigarette smoking product, which is very current in my region, every household, old people especially, including middle ages, they smoke not cigarette but rolled tobacco, that long sometimes. Now, and then 80% of Filipino households in the poorest quintile have at least one member who smokes. True. Sometimes in Cagayan, for instance, in my province, which is a major tobacco producing, native tobacco producing province, sometimes the entire household they smoke, but they do not smoke cigarette because they could not afford it, and they smoke what they produce. They do not spend any money in using tobacco, or they chew tobacco with lime and betel nut and what we call mama or nga in Tagalog. In Mindanao, the same thing. So that's why I would like these things to be clarified in the record of this Senate and spread in the journal so that the people who will succeed us here will have a record of the discussion that we have done in order to dissect the validity of the statements made in this hall for in support or in contrary wise to the measures being discussed. And then again, in fact, their tobacco expenditure tops their monthly spending in 2003. How about in the succeeding years? What was the figure?
Mr. President, I will respond. We do not have the breakdown of the 34%, and therefore we will have to accept the figures for what they are. His Honor can disregard it if it is a figure that he is not comfortable using, because we have more than enough data to support the reason why we need such a law. I regret that the 34% is not broken down, but even assuming that following the line of the line of discussion that is being taken by His Honor, even assuming that 50% only are smoking cigarettes, then that would mean 17% of our population is engaged in tobacco smoking. And if you say 80% of Filipinos' household have members who smoke, even if you cut that into half, then that means 40% of Filipino households are exposed to cigarette. Now, why do we make that distinction? We make that distinction because I know that His Honor's concern is that the cigarette smoking would be the only tobacco product that would be covered by the graphic health warning. And so I will jump to the conclusion that even if we only had a smaller percentage, in fact, engaging in smoking, this would still be a valid measure because we have enough data to show that tobacco smoking in the form of cigarette is still prevalent, even if you slash it by 50%, even if you slash it by 20%. And the fact remains, among the youth in their schools, it is cigarette smoking that they become familiar with, because the marketing and whatever creative forms of advertising that are out there are done by the cigarette companies. That we cannot deny. And so the awareness of the whatever benefits that can be derived from smoking, these youth pick up from these marketing and advertising campaigns and from their youth. And so all we are trying to do with this measure is to provide a counter-advertising to those benefits by showing them in very graphic ways the ill effects of smoking. So, in fact, we will even argue that the majority of the population smokes tobacco products not in the form of cigarettes, well then thankfully the graphic warnings will now be on the cigarettes that they would also see. So even those who are not smoking cigarettes, those who are smoking cigars, hand-rolled cigarettes, and any other tobacco product will benefit from this graphic health warning. So that is why, regardless of the exact number, this is a marketing campaign or advertising campaign, if I may put it that way, that will benefit all the Filipinos, including children who will even tell their parents, Mommy, Daddy, Nay, Tay, yan pala ang nangyayari pag naninigarilyo kayo. So consider it a marketing campaign of the Department of Health that is actually put on the product instead of seen on the television or on the radio or in social media.
Actually, Mr. President, I don't know whether the lady sponsor remembers. The bill covers all types of tobacco products that they must contain picture-based warnings, including cigars, chewing tobacco, and sucking tobacco, and snuffing tobacco, and regardless of packaging, whether it is in packets, in packages, in cartons, hard or soft, or packages, or in pouches, or in cylindrical form, conical form, or rectangular form, or whatever form.
Definitely, Mr. President, I am aware of that. What I was trying to address is what I understood to be His Honor's concern about tobacco products that are probably just handmade in the homes, so would not be commercially sold or marketed, and that what I understood to be His Honor's concern is that not falling under the definition of this law because it is just handmade, and therefore there would be no one to put a graphic warning label on it. That is what I was trying to address when I referred to hand-rolled cigarettes, cigars.
Yes, the practice in the province, Your Honor, at least in my region, during dapon, what we call dapon is they also sell rolled tobaccos for consumption. But anyway, let us leave that. I'm just asking these questions in order to spread them into the record. Now, by the way, you mentioned 5 out of 10 death-causing diseases, and these are the 10 death-causing diseases are mentioned in the footnote are tobacco-related. Can we spread into the record these 5? What are these? Which one? Heart diseases.
Yes, Mr. President. I'm just looking through my notes.
Cardiovascular diseases. Cerebrovascular diseases, I suppose. They will affect the arteries of the nicotine, affect the arteries of the brain.
So of the 10, Mr. President, heart disease, disease of the vascular system, pneumonia, tuberculosis, and chronic lower respiratory disease. They actually fall within the top 7 of the top 10.
Pneumonia,
in the
Your Honor,
10 leading causes of mortality.
Pneumonia, Your Honor, is prevalent even to non-smokers.
Yes, Mr. President.
Especially children.
We never said it wasn't. What we are saying is that smoking cigarettes, tobacco smoking will be found of the top 10. 5 of these are also those that are associated with tobacco smoking. It doesn't mean that every single person who died of a heart disease, of tuberculosis, or pneumonia was a smoker. In fact, many infants die of pneumonia. But what we're saying is that you will find a cross-section there many times.
I'm just trying to clarify precisely these things because even when I read this, I had the impression that this is so. But when I was smoking, I never suffered pneumonia. When I was not smoking, then I got lumbar pneumonia. And I was confined in the Makati Medical Center. So that's why I'm raising this, so that we are not misled into believing that these statements are ex cathedra, that they're merely surmises.
His Honor is blessed with good health. Not many people are as lucky as His Honor. I think the statement is accurate when it says 5 out of 10 of the top 10 death-causing diseases can be attributed. It does not mean that all are 100% attributable. They can be attributed.
Well, you know, not all people can analyze like we are, Mr. President. When they read a sentence, they take it at face value. And unless we really clarify these statements, the impression is that 5 out of the 10 major causes of death in the country are already come from tobacco smoking.
Yes, Mr. President.
usage.
His Honor raised a very good point, and that is precisely why we have a graphic health warning bill. These
Yeah.
are images, so that people who are either illiterate or who have a hard time understanding words would easily be made aware of the ill effects of smoking. Precisely why we have this graphic warning law that will address misconceptions, misunderstandings, and perhaps even failures on the part of writers or even health advocates in explaining by words what, as they say, what can be depicted by picture.
Now I'll go to the next page of the explanatory note. The studies have shown that textual health warnings are not effective. May I request any information from the sponsor? When was the first text warning adopted, and what country?
In our country, it was adopted in 2003.
Our country was the first to adopt.
No. I'm just saying we adopted it in 2003.
Yeah, 2003. But studies have shown, according to this statement, that textual health warnings are not effective. And I'm asking, how long ago has textual health warning been adopted?
I don't have that information, Your Honor. Yes. We have the information that globally that is the findings, but I don't have the information
because
as to
my
when.
Next question is, when was picture-based warning first adopted?
Definitely after
And
text.
what country?
Definitely after textual-based warnings.
Yeah, but I want the sequence of time.
It was first adopted in 2001 in Canada.
In Canada, did they also adopt picture-based warning in Canada at that time?
I'll find out, Mr. President. But what I can tell you before I get the information on Canada is that the move to shift to graphic-based warning was a result of studies conducted in different countries that showed that the textual-based warning were not sufficient because many times, and this is also findings on other warnings or written words, you tend to gloss over it. And that is why the move to graphic-based warning took hold when many countries found out that the simple statement that smoking may cause death, smoking is injurious to your health, did not have the impact that they expected it to have.
I hope I can make myself clear here. The purpose of these questions is to find out if indeed it is necessary to add picture-based warning, because if picture-based warning is more effective way, and I think you're correct in your statement that picture speaks 1,000 more than words. So the thought that entered my mind is, if this is so, why they did not adopt picture-based warning in the beginning? And if they did use text health warnings and discovered that picture-based warnings were more effective, why is it that until now there are other countries that have not yet adopted either one or the other?
The reason is very simple, Mr. President.
No, I'm just giving you the reason why I'm asking.
I will be happy to respond. The reason there are no graphic warnings in our country and in the few other countries that don't have is because of the tobacco lobby, Mr. President. That is very clear. In the countries that have had the political will to pass this, despite the pressures of the tobacco companies, they have been able to pass it. In this Congress alone, we will see that after how many Congresses it did not pass, precisely because of the desire of the tobacco companies to either prevent it from passing or delaying it. And that's why I said I commend the tobacco companies who have expressed their support after 3 Congresses, because now we know that we will hopefully be able to move forward with less resistance than we have encountered in the past. That is the reason why there has not been tobacco-based, picture-based warning sooner. Now, the reason why text warnings were the first, I think I'm just surmising. I was not aware. I was not around during policy making at that time, but I don't believe that there was this was a avenue that was considered at that time. I mean, I think it's common sense that they usually start with words first, and I think it was the most basic. If you look at the history of policies to curtail cigarette smoking, it's a gradual process, no? So I think it makes sense that text-based warnings were tried first, and then eventually they followed with graphic-based warning.
So, if we adopted the text health warnings for cigarettes and tobacco products in 2003, it is now 2014, it's 11 years or at least 10 years, a decade. When was the picture-based warning introduced first, and in what country? And why did we not adopt it earlier? Was it because of tobacco lobby in the Philippines?
I've answered that question, Mr. President. I believe it is yes. From my personal experience as to the time I started defending this, the only reason why it did not pass is because of the strong lobby of the tobacco companies. I cannot speak for the reasons before that because I was not around.
Do we have any proof that some people in our legislative bodies were lobbied by cigarette companies?
Well, I know from personal experience that they were really talking to many members and trying to delay it. So that is my personal perception of the facts that caused the non-passage of the bill since the time that I have sponsored it, Mr. President.
So may I request...
I will also put on record, I will just submit it. It was quite lengthy. It's the Philippine tobacco industry, the strongest tobacco lobby in Asia. I'll just put it on record, Mr. President. It may be of interest to His Honor. Yeah, it's the title of a research paper, what I just read.
Can we have a copy of that?
Yes, Mr. President. We will be happy to put it on record, and our page will deliver a copy to His Honor right now.
Can the sponsor submit a copy to the Secretariat so it can be reflected on the record?
Yes, Mr. President.
Are these statements in this article? I could not read them, Mr. President. Unfortunately, my vision is impaired, and with this print, I will not be able to read. This is written by a foreigner. Have we validated his findings somehow before we accepted his statements? Because this is in effect, an accusation against the legislative body of the country. If we were pressured or lobbied by vested interests to stop the passage of measures like what we are discussing.
Mr. President, I just put this on record because His Honor was asking me the reasons. I mentioned lobby. This article is present. I did not validate anything here. I'm simply putting it on record because it was relevant to the matter that was on the floor.
Yes, but how can we use this unless we have simply because it was stated by a foreigner? I would not take that as true. We do not know whether he is also paid by other people to write a statement like that. Because
actually, Mr. President, the statement I made before that had nothing to do with the paper. I just added that as additional information. His Honor is free to accept it or not. It is part of the record. As we put research on the floor, as they come to our knowledge, I also put this research paper on the floor as well.
So, I would like to know if we adopted the text warning, health warning for tobacco products as far back as 2003. And studies were made already that picture-based warning are more effective. And the proper question to us is when were these studies made known to us in the Philippines, and why did we not adopt a measure like this earlier? Well, the answer is that because of the lobby of the tobacco industry. Now, who were lobbied? We in Congress that are supposed to pass it, or the executive department, the courts, who? Because I've been a member of the Senate since 1987, Mr. President. It becomes a very serious matter if we were stopped from passing a very important measure like this one because of the lobby of vested interest. No?
I've put on record my response to that question, Mr. President. If I say something else, I will just be repeating what I already said.
All right.
That is the reason why, since the time I became chairman of the Committee on Health, it has not moved forward. A lot of my colleagues would have concerns which I feel were easily answered by the clear print of the bill itself, and knowing how on record the tobacco industries had manifested their objection, it was clear to me that that lobby was effective.
Mr. President, the explanatory note also says pictorial health warnings on tobacco products already exist in 15 countries. And I think the 15 countries are mentioned in the footnote. There were now 192 countries that participated in the adoption of the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control. If 15 developed and developing countries have already adopted pictorial health warnings, how about text warnings? How many have adopted it out of 192 participants? Are all these 192 participant countries in the Framework Convention on Tobacco Control signatories to the convention?
I will put on record the figures as soon as they are handed to me, but allow me to make a correction, Mr. President. I believe this data is actually no longer accurate. There are more than 15 countries that have picture-based warnings. There are now 72. So this is not current. So that is now 72 countries.
Now, I'm asking about first about
Yes.
the 192 countries. How many out of this 192 countries are they all? First of all, my question is: are they all signatories? Or because the term used is participants, and the Philippines was a signatory. Now, my question is: are all these 192 countries signatories to this convention?
I don't need that. The answer. Of the 192 countries that participated, 178 have already ratified it.
They're signatories. That is, when you say signatories to the convention, they adhere or they
Commit to
Yes,
adhere to the
they
framework
ratified
convention.
It, huh?
Yes.
They ratified it already.
Yes.
And of those, how many?
178 out of 192.
170.
8.
178. If 178 ratified, more than 15 have already adopted pictorial-based
Mr. President,
pictorial health warnings.
that was the correction I was making earlier. That is no longer accurate. It's
Yes.
now 72.
I understood. I understand that. Now, are all these 178 countries that ratified it, including the Philippines, adopt a pictorial health warnings?
72, Mr. President.
172
No,
already?
72 have. 72
72.
countries.
So, 106 have not adopted.
That would appear to be the conclusion
Yes, yes.
we will draw.
Do we know why these countries have not adopted a pictorial health warning? And what is the level of their economic development? Are they developed or developing?
Well, members of my staff over the last few years have attended the Southeast Asian Tobacco Control Alliance, and so in their forums and discussions, the prevailing view is that it is because of the tobacco lobby, Mr. President, in each individual country.
Can we get the figures, the exact figures, so that we will understand?
What figures of what, Mr. President?
What is the economy of the 72 that adopted these pictorial health warnings, and the types of economies of those that have not adopted it, adopted them rather?
Well, Mr. President, I think we all have a general idea of the classification of countries as developed or developing. So if I may just put on record the wide range of countries that have picture-based warnings. We have Argentina and Australia, Bahrain, Belgium, Brazil, Burkina Faso, Canada, El Salvador, Fiji, Egypt. We have Indonesia, Yemen, Vietnam, Taiwan, Switzerland, Sudan, Qatar, Peru, Oman, Malaysia. So I think it covers a wide range of economic models, Mr. President.
No, the thrust of my question, Your Honor, is to find out how come the others have not hurriedly adopt this type of warning. And what I heard was that we are supposed to adopt this as far back as 2008, and we have not done it. Is there a compulsion on us to to adopt this kind of measure?
Well, Mr. President, I know His Honor is familiar with international law and our obligations, and when we sign a convention, we do make a affirmative. That is an affirmative statement on our part that we will comply. So
That's correct.
that has been the basis for our trying to do that when I first became chair. At this point, I personally consider it irrelevant. I'm not doing it to meet any deadlines. I just continue to believe that it is the responsible action to take.
Mr. President, the reason why I'm asking that is each country act on its own best interest. Now, if other countries have not adopted it, there must be a reason. They must be serving the interest of their own people or their own economies or their own government. And I would like to find out whether these people were these countries were penalized or not adopted a measure like this for their own people. Because I know I have studied international law. I do not say that I'm an expert, but I studied it under one of the best professor you can find. Huh?
There's no penalty.
Milton Katz, and of Harvard. But there are too many kinds of treaties. Some are mandatory, directory, and some are you enforce it if you want to enforce it, and you have the time to enforce it if you want. There are no penalties. And that's why I'm asking these questions, if there is any penalty on us, if we're not going to adopt any measure like this. We were talking of policy, not to copy what other countries do, but to adopt a policy to serve the people. And we have different notions about the policy, and that's why we're debating it.
If the question is, are there penalties? There are no penalties.
Yes.
If the question is, are we doing this to just adapt to what other countries are doing? We are not. We have long passed the deadline for compliance. I am no longer chairman of the Committee on Health, as the vice chairman and as the sponsor of this measure, I believe we are passing it, or at least I am putting it forward, because I believe that this is what is relevant to our country. I do believe that it is relevant to other countries as well, but I cannot give you the individual reasons of the remaining 106 countries for non-passage. I can only share with you the experiences that were also relayed to me by members of my staff who have attended.
Can we get from the Department of Foreign Affairs the countries, a listing of the countries that already complied with this, 72 of them, and the countries that are not compliant yet, so that we will at least evaluate their situation in comparison to ours. Because, as I said, there are many people that will be affected by this measure, not just the government, not just the manufacturers, but the consumers as well as the people employed and earning a living out of this tobacco industry.
We can do that, Mr. President, but if His Honor earlier made a statement that the decisions he would be making as a policymaker, he would be making regardless of what other countries were doing. So
I'm sorry.
I would just like to ask now why now he would like to burden this sponsor with that information when he doesn't believe that his actions would be affected by those other countries anyway. And I am also making my own manifestation that I am putting this forward as a policy that is being initiated by our own Department of Health, regardless of what other countries are doing. Nevertheless, I'm happy to provide, but I just would like to put that on record as well, so that, as His Honor says, people would know why we are making these decisions. And I agree with His Honor that we make these decisions because it is what is best for our people and not what is best for other citizens of other countries.
Well, anyway, Mr. President, in order not to prolong the discussion, I have no intention to make any slur or any. I know the lady is very assiduous in doing her work, but I'm just asking questions in order to put them into the record, the answers, as well as my questions. Anyway, Mr. President, I will go to the text of the measure next week. May I now request that I will stop my interpellation in the meantime. I have many questions that I would like to be clarified so that we can deal with this problem intelligently, at least for myself anyway.
The Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the said bill, the picture-based warnings bill.
With the permission of the sponsor,
Yes, Mr. President.
without any objection from the sponsor,
Yes, we will be happy to proceed next week.
we
any
suspend
day.
consideration of the measure.
Mr. President,
Yes, Majority Leader.
the gentleman from San Juan has indicated his desire to make a manifestation. Senator J.V. Hercito.
Senator Hercito is recognized.
Yes, Mr. President, good afternoon. I would like to make a manifestation regarding Senate Resolution number 572 entitled Resolution Directing the Proper Senate Committee to Conduct an Inquiry in Aid of Legislation on the 7 billion real estate scam involving the Home Development Mutual Fund, or Pag-ibig, and Globe Asiatics Delphine Lee. Filed by this representation, which was referred to the Committee on Blue Ribbon last May of 2014. Your Honor, as Chair of the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing, and Resettlement, I would like to manifest that our committee has already conducted our first hearing regarding the Globe Asiatic and Pag-ibig Fund controversy during the break. In view of Resolution number 9, entitled Resolution Authorizing all committees of the Senate to hold meetings, hearings, or conferences during the recess of the Congress for the purpose of studying and preparing any proposed legislation or to investigate any matter or subject falling under their jurisdiction on April 8, 2014. And Mr. President, we intend to have our second hearing next week, May 15, 2014, 10 a.m. at the Session Hall of the Senate. That's all, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Hercito.
Mr. President, I move for the reading of the additional reference of business.
The Secretary will read the additional reference of business.
Committee report number 27, submitted by the Committee on Justice and Human Rights on House Bill number 4084, introduced by Representative Puno et al., entitled An Act Granting Philippine Citizenship to Andre Blatche and recommending its approval with amendments taking into consideration Senate Bill number 2108, sponsored Senator Sonny Angara and Pimentel III.
Majority Leader, referred to the calendar for ordinary business.
Mr. President, I move that we transfer House Bill number 4084 under Committee Report number 27 from the calendar for ordinary business to the calendar for special orders.
Any objection? Hearing none. House Bill number 4084 under Committee Report number 27 is so transferred.
Mr. President, I move that we consider House Bill number 4084 under Committee Report number 27.
Any objection? Consideration of the measure is in order.
I move that the Secretary read the title of the measure.
Secretary will read the title of the measure.
An Act Granting Philippine Citizenship to Andre Blatche.
I move that we recognize Senator Angara to sponsor the measure.
Senator Angara is recognized to sponsor the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President, Madam Majority Leader, and dear colleagues. The Filipino is a sports-loving citizen with a distinct affection for basketball. The robust professional basketball leagues in the Philippines, the Philippine Basketball Association, or PBA, is the oldest running professional basketball league in Asia and is the second oldest in the world, next to the NBA of the US. Along with several semi-professional collegiate and recreational leagues all over the country, including the UNTV Cup, where the Senate is currently fielding a team, it is safe to say that basketball is the country's premier sport. The recent modest ascent in the FIBA standings is indicative of the development of Philippine basketball on the international scene, which ought to be sustained. The Philippine basketball stakeholders, including the Filipino cagers, have contributed to such positive trajectory of Philippine basketball in the Asian and world arenas. International tournaments allow countries to be represented by naturalized players subject to certain conditions, i.e., the number of naturalized players in a team. Current FIBA rules allow one naturalized player per team. Other countries, while ranking higher than the Philippines, have opted to take advantage of this naturalized player rule, meant to equalize the world basketball landscape with or to great benefit. This will not be the first time the Philippines will naturalize athletes in order to represent our country in international tournaments. In 1985, with 3 naturalized players, Dennis Still, Jeff Moore, and Chip England, the Philippines, represented by the RP Northern Consolidated Corporation, won the Jones Cup and the ABC Championship, which is now known as the FIBA Asia Championship, which we hosted late last year and placed second, Mr. President. I remember many of our members, including Senator J.V. Ejercito, Senator Majority Leader Alan Cayetano, Senator Bam Aquino, and myself were there to cheer on our cagers. Other naturalized athletes have likewise brought honor to the country, like 14th and 15th SEA Games gold medalists for swimming, Akiko Thompson, and SEA Games medalist and swimming champion Christine Jacob Sandejas. The International Basketball Federation, or FIBA, the governing body in international basketball competitions, as said earlier, allows one naturalized player to play per tournament per country. In 2010, the Philippines naturalized citizen Marcus Eugene Doutit brought honor to the Philippines through his key contributions, leading to the Philippine teams winning the 2010 Philippine Invitational Cup, third place in the 2010 William Jones Cup, and the 2012 William Jones Cup. Known as the FIBA World Championships from 1950 until 2010, the FIBA Basketball World Cup is the flagship event of the International Basketball Federation. In August 2013, the Philippines, represented by the Smart Gilas, placed second with a 7-2 win-loss record in the 27th FIBA Asia Championship held at the Mall of Asia Arena, Pasay City, Philippines, not too far from this august building, and clinched a ticket to the coveted FIBA World Cup for the first time in 40 years. The Philippines, Mr. President, is now ranked 34th after the 2013 Continental Championships. With the 2014 FIBA Basketball World Cup set on August 30 to September 14 of this year, 2014, there is an urgent need to have a pool of naturalized players along with Marcus Doutit to increase the team's overall capability, and also to have a backup in case of injuries. It was noted that Marcus Doutit suffered injuries in previous tournaments, and it is best to have as wide a pool as possible. The subject of this bill is Mr. Andre Blatche, an American 6'11" power forward center who is currently playing with the Brooklyn Nets, who are currently engaged in a playoff series with the defending champions of the NBA, the Miami Heat, who has career averages in the NBA of almost 10 points and 5.4 rebounds per game, and season averages of 12 points and 6 rebounds. And he played an important role when the Brooklyn Nets beat the Toronto Raptors in their first round NBA series, Mr. President. He is in a position at age 28 to make significant contributions to Philippine basketball, and better than that, and even better, he has expressed his willingness to play for our country, and he is eligible thus for the conferment of the honor of being a Philippine citizen. In consideration of all the above, Mr. President, approval of this measure is respectfully sought. Mabuhay po ang Pilipinas, mabuhay po ang Gilas. Salamat po.
Thank you, Senator Angara. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, to give the members time, I move that we suspend the consideration of House Bill number 4084 under Committee Report number 27.
Consideration of the measure is suspended. Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn session until Monday, May 12,
3 o'clock.
at 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Session adjourned until Monday, May 12, 2014 at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.